Good evening, coaches. You're all very welcome to our webinar tonight. Tonight we're going to be looking at an introduction to sports psychology and mental skills training. I'm delighted to introduce Paula Reardon. Paula's from Newtown, and he obviously would have played with Wicklow seniors over the years, and he has been involved with our academy squads a couple of years ago and was over our minor team. And in addition to that, he's obviously an MSc in applied sports and exercise psychology, and would have great experience in relation to playing at the highest level and coaching at our highest level at juvenile level. So without further ado, I'll pass you on to Paul. I hope you enjoyed the webinar tonight. It's great to see so many numbers on it. It's a very important area. A lot of these webinars, we cover technical and tactical and physical, and sometimes we don't look at the psychological end of things. And I think the psychological end of things is so important in relation to drive and all them other things. So I hope you enjoy the webinar tonight. If you have any questions for Paul as we go along, just use the chat option and I'll pass the question through. So without further ado, I'll pass you over to Paul. Paul, if you just want to unmute there, please.
Now, folks, I hope you can hear me now.
Yeah, loud and clear. Thanks, Paul.
Stuff. Yeah, sorry about that technical issue there. Listen, thanks very much for the introduction there, Paul. You just robbed my introduction there. Paul said it there. Paula Reardon from Newtown there, played for a long time, probably myself would say too long, and other people will probably tell you that as well. And then I as Paul mentioned there, I coached up in the academy there for several years while I was playing. I would have taken development squads then from sort of 13, 14 up to minor, and coached with a couple of minor county teams as well, and up until under 20s then also as well. I suppose I have two jobs. One of my jobs, I work for Dublin Fire Brigade as a frontline paramedic and firefighter, doing that for about 20 years now. I also work with the critical incident stress management team, and we work with providing psychological first aid and support to any of our crew members who have attended any sort of critical or traumatic incidents. And obviously then have my second job here, which is I would consider my real work. I've been a sports psychology practitioner now for roughly about 4 years, mostly in the GAA space, actually, somewhere that I'm really, really comfortable in with my experiences playing and coaching. But I've also worked in Irish men's senior hockey teams. I've done work with some with soccer teams, boxers, golfers, and other performance artists, Irish dancers, and the likes of that. But I'd always had an interest in, I suppose, the mental side of the game. In particular, as you went on in your career and you're holding on to anything to try and get an extra few years or two, I would have definitely been interested in the mental side of the game. But my interest was really peaked, I suppose, when I was involved in coaching teams. And I suppose, despite what I would have thought would have been a really good quality of coaching, there was a good amount of resources put towards these teams in regards to sports science, possibly not enough mental skills training, but they were as well prepared as any other teams. But yet, when it came to the sort of pressures of playing in the big tournaments or in pressure situations or in the build-up to game, I found that maybe the mindset wasn't correct. The nerves and anxiety were getting the better of teams. And I suppose as a coach, you would take responsibility for that, for focusing overly on Paul kind of referenced there, focusing overly on the sort of physical side and the tactical side of it. So instead of just researching it, I said, look, I just actually want to go and learn about it. So I went off, studied, and here I am now. And I'm delighted to be, really genuinely delighted to be given this sort of opportunity, this chance, because this is essentially the reason why I would have gone off and studied, why I would have gone off and tried to find out more information about this, because it gives me to do what I can, in my own little small way, to try and help Wicklow GAA moving forward. So look, again, I am delighted, I'm excited to be doing it. Paul made a point there. Paul's going to be managing the chat box there. If you have any sort of questions and Paul looks at the questions and thinks that's something that I can answer now and it's going to be helpful for the group, well, by all means, we'll address those. But I'd love to actually, for you to just write them down on a pen and paper. And the very last slide of the presentation is all my contact details. And I'd like you just to, write them down on paper and fire them off to me this evening. Fire them off to me as soon as this is finished, and I'll try and get back to you as quick as possible with as much help as I can give you. There'll be an introduction as to what sort of sports psychology is. There'll be a little sciencey bit as to explain it. I'm not heavy on the theory of the science of it myself. A lot of what I do is, as the introduction says, applied. So we're going to do introduction. We'll look at the benefits of sports psychology. Then we're going to look at sort of how we can develop a foundation for and a culture of motivation and trying to create an environment in which all our athletes, all our players can flourish. They can be motivated. They can perform. They can feel safe, which is obviously a big thing at the moment. With mental health, and they feel valued. How can we create that environment in order for our footballs to flourish? Footballers, our GAA athletes to flourish then on the pitch as well. And then I suppose then at the end of it, I want to try and definitely to leave with something. I definitely want you to leave with something that you can hopefully use when we do eventually get out onto the pitches again. So we're going to try and introduce some mental skills training into some of the common drills or common activities you might be doing in your training sessions already. Okay, and that's going to how it's going to go. So look at, and hopefully along the way as I'm talking or hitting on different points, there'll be what we might call, I suppose, the low-hanging fruit, the bits and pieces that you might go, oh, hang on a sec, that's useful in that's going to be very useful for me. I can see how I can use that in different situations. I can see how I could have used that before. So hopefully there'll be a good few of those little things that you can pick up on as we go along the way. Okay, so we'll get going on it, and we'll see. First question that I always ask here, and I'm going to actually leave you alone for a minute, would be to, let's get our thinking caps on here. And what actually do we figure? What do we think makes an elite athlete? What are all the sort of the elements, the skills, characteristics, the attitudes, the behaviors? What do we think it is that makes an elite athlete? Now, I'm not saying that we're going to try and turn all of our players into elite athletes, okay? But there are definitely some elements and skills that we can help along the way develop in our young GAA players and our young adult GAA players, and even our young adult GAA players also as well, and adult GAA players. All right, it's it's mental side of the game. It's never too young or too late to start sorting looking at elements of it. So I'm going to give you 30 seconds now, because I talked for the first 30 seconds of it. Have a think about it, write a few down on a sheet of paper beside you there. And what are these elements, skills, characteristics do you think these and the other top athletes have? So we've Cristiano Ronaldo, we've Katie Taylor, Tiger Woods, we've our own Kevin O'Brien there, and we have the current footballer of the year, Brian Fenton, there in the corner. Try and think of all the little different sort of elements of behaviour. I'll leave you alone 15, 20 seconds, and then we'll come back in and we'll see if you can match any of them up. Okay, so we might have written a few down here now. I'm going to go to the next slide, and then we see if some of the ones that some of you might have picked. So these would be the characteristics, at least athlete characteristics that would have maybe come from, that has come from different parts of research, and are the responses that I would get back from groups fairly regularly. So we're just going to put those ones together. I'm just wondering how many of the ones that you've written down are actually matching up. And I suppose, look, it's a good point to say that we're not trying to make all our athletes like, elite athletes, like I just said there. We're trying to just help them and support them along the way, try and help make them play to the level of their ability as consistently as possible. Okay, and these are the sort of research characteristics that they say. And I suppose that the message would be that we don't have to be sports psychology practitioners. You don't have to have loads of training or loads of knowledge and loads of background to start introducing these into some of your training sessions and into some setups that you have in the club. And hopefully that's the sort of thing that we're going to be looking at this evening or tonight. So look at all those characteristics, and I suppose the important question here would be is the question there at the bottom. So are all elite athletes, are they born driven, committed, self-aware? Do they all have good family social support? confident, resilient, mental strength, communication, fitness, leadership, focus, bounce back ability, all these things, are they motivated? You know, are elite athletes born with this, or are they learned, or or can they be coached? You know, yes, in my experience, you know, there are some God-given sort of naturally born athletes. Now, be that through genetics, be it through social learning, be it through early coaching, be it through good coaching, that, you know, some people do develop these elite characteristics more quickly than others. So, but even if you look at that list there now, there's definitely things that as coaches, as coaches, we can help developing our athletes, and we can do it while on the pitch or in training in training sessions without adding a huge amount of time to you know, time commitments are a big thing, but without adding huge amount of time to our training sessions or putting on extra training sessions. So yeah, driven, committed. If we create a nice, motivated atmosphere, environment, our players are going to be more driven and committed. You know, skillful. That's our job. You know, improve the skills, improve confidence. Absolutely, coach is in a great position to help develop a player's confidence and mental strength by the sort of the language that they use or the environment they create around them. Fitness, again, a job. Focus and concentration. Absolutely. And we're going to be talking about that later on. Helping them with their self-awareness, to finding out what they're good and bad at. Yeah, absolutely, we can do all those things. Help them with their communication, building their resilience, helping them form leadership qualities or leadership roles or become leaders. Yeah, bounce back ability, coming back from making mistakes and motivated. You know, as far as I would be concerned, they would be in the remit for a coach. Okay, and it's just about maybe us. Maybe coaches maybe not being educated properly, maybe a bit of a fear factor behind it also, been implementing some of these, all right, but we're not asking our coaches to become sports psychology practitioners. If we think of it, I know I saw Gary's Jemison's strength and conditioning presentation there a couple of weeks ago, and this is very much like the same. Let's start introducing them to these sort of things to them early, okay, and let's start, you know, developing their mental skills, their mental resilience, their mental ability, their mental strength at the same rate that we're developing their physical capability and their physical abilities. So, you know, it's I don't know, some people might think that they're born, or some people, you know, yeah, as I said, definitely some players are probably born more naturally gifted than others, okay? But then if we look at the sort of list that we get there, I guarantee that everybody put down the likes of driven, committed, focused. And we kind of already, and if we look at the list, if I gave you 10 minutes to do that list, I guarantee 50% of it would be physical and the other 50% of it would be mental, psychological. So if we're aware of it and we kind of write it down and we note it, why is it then that we spend so much time preparing our athletes physically and not spending enough time preparing them mentally? Okay, and that's kind of what the message of tonight is going to be. How can we try and address that sort of balance there? Because originally I probably thought that, yes, as the sports psychologist, I'm the only person for that job to come in and help athletes develop that. But no, the coach is the best person, and the managers of the teams are the best people in the situation, most contact with the players to instill these good practices within their players. Okay, so I suppose if we look at it, we're very aware at the start of every single season, okay, that we need to do our strength and conditioning training. We need to do our pre-season training. We need to do our skills, our tactics. You know, we need to do our, you know, we are so aware that we have to prepare our athletes physically for the stresses and strains of a season, okay? But we then sort of forget or negate, again, it will be said maybe through lack of confidence around the subject or lack of education, but we don't actually prepare our athletes mentally for the stresses and strains that are going to come for a season. So if I click to the next slide here, you know, the kind of picture says it. You've got what it looks like a physically good, fit, so a specimen of a person there, but yet they're being weighted down by, you know, anxiety, nerves, loss of confidence, you know, negative reactions, and again, negative self-thoughts, loss of focus, you know, lack of motivation, not bouncing back after mistake, all these things. So we're after spending so much time doing physical preparation to start of the season, getting our diets right, the rehab, the prehab, the foam rolling, strength and conditioning, all these, the gyms, you know, getting all these physical preparations. But yet when we get a bit nervous, we get a bit anxious, lose some confidence, lose our place in the team, get injured, we then lose the ability to put all that good work out onto the pitch, okay? And that is where we want to try and address that balance, Okay, so if I've got myself to 100% of peak fitness at the start of the year, if I get nervous, I want to be able to deal with it mentally. If I make a mistake in a game, I want to be able to deal with that well. If I lose a bit of motivation through injury or losing my place, I want to be able to, you know, come out of that situation in the most beneficial way possible. And that's what we want to try and maybe develop with some of our athletes now, you know, and hopefully you're going to pick up a few bits and pieces tonight. They're going to help you do that. So like what we're going to do is, so, you know, as I said, what an aim would be to be very conscious at the start of the season of, yeah, there's all the physical elements that we're going to be looking at the start of the season. But here's some of the psychological elements that we also want to be looking at into our season. What where our team don't go well, don't necessarily perform well under pressure, under stress. Let's start developing systems going to help them, you know, cope with better. Don't lose so much emotional control, and help them perform to their best of ability. Get out of their own way a little bit. Okay, is something that you would say it. So we said here's the kind of sciencey bit. This is what happens, you know, when we perceive ourselves to be a little bit under pressure or under stress and under, you know, we'll probably keep referring back to this. We've got a few examples of what happens, but I suppose this is the you know, our thoughts and our beliefs about a situation. Our perception about a situation can cause feelings and can cause emotions, okay, or a good or a bad response, okay, and then that then has can have either a psychological reaction or it can have a physical reaction, positive or negative. We get over nervous, we start thinking negative, we have a negative mindset going into performance. We start thinking positively, we have a positive mindset, you know, we're going positively into a performance. So we want to be able to teach our athletes, GA players, to have focused more on the sort of positive side of it, the rational side of it, less on the negative side. And we want to be able to realize that they have an awful lot more control over those thoughts than they actually think. Because if you look at the chart on the right-hand side there, we can see how the stress level affects on performance. Too little stress, too laid back, underhyped, okay? And then we can see then when we go over to onto the sort of orange and onto the red side, where we've got too much stress, we've got overload, and then we're kind of into the burnout phase where we fatigue earlier, there's exhaustion, anxiety and panic, lose emotional control, lose rational thought process, lose a bit of you know, shortness of breath, loss of physical capabilities, loss of psychological capabilities, not able to think straight, not able to make clear decisions. And that's the sort of, and we want to try and help prepare our athletes for those situations, because they're going to happen in games, there's no doubt about it. And we want to be able to help them in those situations, refocus, rezone back in, focus back onto their performance, have nice steady set patterns that help them do that as well. Okay. So I suppose these are just the kind of examples that I would have talked about. Okay, so there's different situations and different environments. So it's our perception of that situation or our perception of that environment that is going to set off this sort of chain reaction. And this is kind of why I suppose why we need to have these mental skills trained, and mental agility, mental resilience. You know, life, I suppose, like a football match, it's not linear, it doesn't go in a straight line. There's going to be ups, there's going to be downs. All right, and I can't change the situation, but I want to be able to have a good, positive management and good positive reaction about that situation. So the two examples I have there are quite simple. I suppose the one is the girl sitting there about to do an exam. Same could be said when you're about to sit down to do an interview. We've done all the preparation, we've done all the study, all the responses ready, and because we lose it, we kind of get a bit nervous or a bit anxious in the build up to the interview or to the exam. We lose a bit of focus, lose emotional. We start thinking very negatively that as soon as we step into the door of that interview, it's like somebody stuck a vacuum to the back of our head and have taken out every single proper and good and structured thought that I had. Okay, and all of a sudden, my nerves have disrupted all my process, and now I can't give my best performance. I can't say all the answers that I want. I can't get all my answers down on the sheet. Now I'm thinking, I'm not going to get my exams. I'm not going to get the college place. My parents are going to be so upset, and it's a spiral downwards. And the same happens in performance, in sports performance. The same happens to us in daily sorts of life, in workplace environments also as well. And I suppose the example on the right is a perfect example of how the difference of a mindset can be over a short period of time. So the picture is Rory McIlroy. I think it was 2 years ago. about to play the British Open in his home club. He was, instrumental in getting it played there. He was coming in great form into the competition, favourite for the competition. And he said that on the morning of the morning that he was due to tee off for his first hole, he said he was walking in towards the clubhouse, and he said, a couple of hours before he was teeing off, and he started meeting his old friends, coaches, people, staff, people he played golf with. And he said all of a sudden, he realised that there was expectation. He really, actually not much expectation. He realised how much people wanted him to win. How much people actually really were hoping and praying for him to win, how much, and he said it felt like a completely different pressure. He said so much point to the point that he lost so much control. And let's think, Rory McIlroy has as much access to sports science as any elite athlete who earns that amount of money. But he wasn't able to gain enough sort of emotional control. He wasn't able to gain enough control of his thought process to the point that when he was putting his hand down to put the ball onto the tee, his hand was actually shaking. And if you notice, I don't know anybody who knows golf, but he took an iron out for safe play on the first hole, and he still made an 8, which effectively ruled him out of the competition that he has been instrumental in hosting, in getting to that golf club. He said so, and he finished 8 over or something like that. Switch forward the next day, okay, he went out the next morning, and I think he shot 15 shots better. So, and I think he missed the cut by only 1 shot. So the difference in the mindset, he said, walking out the next day of nothing to lose, this is it. I actually finished off quite well yesterday, so I still have a bit of confidence. I can still be confident going forward, and let's just go out and see here what happens. That was nearly a conscious decision. So if we can teach our athletes to make those conscious decisions, to maybe not so much focus on the negative, take a bit more control back, focus on the positive, that's going to have a really good effect, positive on performance. So I just think it's a really good example of how powerful, because there's no amount of work you can do on a golf range in 24 hours that improves your golf by 15 shots, I think, is what he improved on the second round. So it was just a completely different mindset that he went out with the next day. And we want to try and encourage that. We want to try and get our athletes to be cognizant of that, and to try and talk themselves into those sort of situations. So here's another kind of the sciencey bit, what sports psychology is. It involves the study of how psychological factors affect performance, and how participation in sport and exercise affects psychological or physiological and physical factors. Okay, so real simple way of it, all right, is basically we're trying to understand the relationship between how our brain and how our body works when we're performing in sport. So if we get nervous, our brain is going to affect it. If we feel really in a negative way, but if we feel good and happy and positive, we're going to go out with a positive mindset. All right, that's kind of, we don't want to overcomplicate it, but the general goal is to help teach mental skills necessary to perform consistently in training and competition, and then to help the players and coaches, right, which is important, pay to the players and coaches achieve their full potential. There's a lot of stuff in here that coaches can adapt into their own coaching style, adapt into their coach-athlete relationships, all right? So we're also trying to stop the 6 inches between the players' ears affecting their physical performance. Stop this getting in the way of this, all right? So when we get nervous, anxiety, emotional control, loss of focus, all those things, that is then going to have a negative effect on our performance. All right, and important, really, I suppose, and important especially for us or for coaches to understand, is that it's more sports psychology is as much about improving players' performance, their mindset, their behaviours around their performance, as it is about improving those rigid sort of mental skills, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. The key aim is to help the player to add some structure, some reality and rationale into their daily thought process and mindsets. A little bit worried that one, but we want them thinking rationally and structured. We want them thinking of development. We want them thinking, having a good performance mindset. And I suppose there's a few myths involved with sports psychology then as well. All right, is that they only need sports psychology when there's something wrong or there's an obvious weakness. Okay, possibly, maybe that's what it traditionally would have been brought in. Very much brought in as like, let's tick the, we're going to tick a box here. I'm going to talk. I was guilty of it myself as a coach. Get a sports psychologist in, do 2 or 3 sessions. That's that done. Okay, not necessarily. Sports psychology is just, we're trying to address that balance between physical preparation and mental preparation. All right. And we're trying to make sure that once they have in their peak physical condition, that they're able to put it all out onto the pitch and that they're not getting their own way of doing it. Another one would be one chat, with a sports psych solves everything. Absolutely not. There's no, I don't have a coach, virtual coach. I don't analyze everything anybody says. Okay, absolutely not. And one like the sport, like mental skills, mental training is like any other skill or any other football skill or any GAA skill, base skill that you would have done before. It takes a time. In fact, sometimes it can be longer to learn, harder to learn, because we're dealing with all mindset the way we previously would have thought, or all behaviors or all attitudes, the way we normally perceive something. We're now trying to switch that around. So from somebody who would automatically always think negative and always be very hard on themselves, we're now trying to get them to stop, take a bit of a breath, maybe don't overthink it, and maybe just be a little bit more positive with yourself. All right. So we're trying to change all behavior. So mental skills and these changes of mindset take a while to bed in. I don't know if any of you remember the first time they went up to a football pitch to hit a sliotar or to play football, and they saw somebody doing a solo or flicking the ball up with a hurl, said that looks easy, and all of a sudden, they try and perform the skill themselves. Ball goes too far up in the air, hits them in the face, whatever, until a coach comes over, tells you, gives you, this is the right processes. You hold the ball in this hand, you let it drop onto here, you get a bit more practice at it, you get more used, you get more direction, you get more opportunity to practice at it, and then you kind of tweak it till it works really, really well for you. Mental skills, no different. All right. So it's probably a kind of thing as people try it, sit down, go over the stuff with maybe that a sports psych has done, and then kind of after a couple of weeks go, none of it's working. All right, and they give it. So it takes time to bed in, and it takes time to change people's mindsets and things like that as well. Sports psychology is for elite professional athletes only. Absolutely not. Okay, there's we pointed out that list of sort of characteristics of elite athletes, but it's nice to try and amazing to try and think that in GA clubs around the country, we're trying to instill those characteristics into people, even though they're not an elite athlete or professional athletes, their life skills also as well. But even at that as well, they are like, club football, who's to say that isn't nearly up to elite status now at this stage anyway. But, there are an awful lot of pressures and strains and stresses, psychological stresses, and even a senior club footballer will go through during the season. So why not help them? Why not expose them to this sort of mental skills training, this education around mental strength? Another myth would be sports psych, not for me, don't need it. You know what I mean? I guarantee there's always, like, some players will buy into it. Some players won't buy into it. Okay, and that is just the way it is. Some players love going to the gym. Some players you really have to bring them to the gym. You have to bring them to the gym and make sure they're doing it. All right. So some players will always buy into things quicker than others. All right, but it's always should be something that we have there in the background. Look, if you don't want it now, it's always there for you. And we are who we are. You either have it or you don't. So the old Asher, that fella's a bottler, or he doesn't have it up here, never has it up there. He doesn't have the mental strength for it, doesn't have the head for it. Those sort of things. Well, maybe that player is desperate to have the head for it. Maybe that player just doesn't know how to cope when he gets into those sort of nervous, anxious situations, or when he makes a mistake, or when he misses the first free or something, or he or she misses the first free. It's definitely, as we said, these are all things that we can 100% be coached. And not by just practitioners, but by us as coaches creating good environment, good language, good setups, good mindsets, then we can 100% develop all these things that I've talked about. Another myth would be that it's all about positivity. Look, it's not, there's no stage do I just come up to go to athletes and just start ramming positivity down their throats. It's absolutely not, yeah. It is better to put a positive spin on things, but mine more is let's put a rational spin on it. Never mind a really overly positive sort of spin, but a rational spin. And so, and one always would be a player would say, "Oh God, what if I don't play well?" Well, hang on a second. As a coach, or turn around and go, "Well, listen. Well, what if you do play well? You're like, there's as much chance of you not playing, or you playing really, really well. Actually, more chance of you playing well. You're flying and training." So that's the way I want you to think about it from now on, not thinking about what if I don't play well. And they're the sort of things we will be touching on, little bits and pieces, language, changes, and little changes around the squads, the way we talk to squads, that we can actually really, that does set up the foundation of mental skills and positivity and confidence and moving forward. The benefits of sports psychology, sports performance psychology, whatever, it helps athletes understand themselves a bit more, because we'll talk about this in a minute. Helping athletes look at their strengths, their weaknesses, opportunities, threats, things like that. Helps athletes perform to their ability more consistently. We talked about that. Helps them kind of get out of their own way and put all the hard work that they've done in physical preparation, allows them to actually go out and perform. Preparing mentally for competition and training, helps with structured analysis of performance. These are all things we're going to look at now. It helps you work constructively with your coaches, improve communication, improves concentration, focus, overcome distractions. Helps bounce back from setbacks, increase motivation, self-confidence, improves mental resilience, and improves emotional anxiety control, and kind of promotes what we call as 24-hour athletes. So it just promotes good practices, good mindset going forward. The likes of the structured analysis of performance, instead of just going, I was good or I was bad. Let me investigate my performance a little bit more and let me do some work-ons for Tuesday night. Nobody needs to know about these things on Tuesday night, but I know that after performance, I need to work on my kick pass. So every opportunity I get on Tuesday night, I'm going to really, really work hard at my kick pass. All right. So it promotes that sort of mindset, that sort of attitude, and that's exactly what we want from our players, because there's only so much we're exposed to them. We want them going away from the pitch still thinking about development, still thinking about learning, still thinking about where they can you look for those little extra percentages. Now we're into the sort of mental skills. These would be, these would necessarily be the sort of ones that actually a practitioner might come in, and these are kind of like not rigid, these are more sort of structured skills. So, if I'm working with an athlete and I'm teaching them, this is how you're going to deal when you make a mistake. They go step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, and that's layering, and there's quite a lot of big process involved in that. So they're the kind of hard mental skills that a sports psychology practitioner might be teaching to athletes. Not necessarily something that you want to work at, or that you have too much sort of control over, but definitely the likes of the imagery, visualization. I always found that, even as a player myself, or even with teams, even the likes of training, when we're doing sort of, short, sharp sort of movements, short, sharp drills, that we're saying, okay, instead of just doing loads of repetitions really fast, let's kind of set it up a little bit better and go, okay, you're imagining games on Sunday, there's the opposition jersey out there, opposition player, I want you to get out and compete for this ball. I want you to just, imagine that you're bursting out for a ball out there all the time, and you have to burst through this player, setting up the sort of scenario rather than just going, right, go out to the cone and back. It promotes this visualization imagery, takes a little bit of gives them a little bit of a pause and kind of a bit of a focus on bursting out through that tackle. Okay, so rather than just say go and repeat, right, these are just little sort of things that we can introduce into our sessions. Right, let's imagine that we're in this setting, and let's play it at match pace. Okay, so they're the really rigid, the sort of structured ones that I talked about there, that I listed there in the previous slide. But look, at a massive thing about sports psychology, this is just my own sort of thought on it, my own twist on it, would be that it's very much just about promoting deliberate behavior, rational thinking, and a good mindset. Okay, and how do we do that? Sounds easy, okay, but just saying it doesn't work. And I know, look, I've been in the coach's shoes, now by the look of it, you're thinking, well, what does Paul want me to do? No, I'm already the fitness coach, skills coach, S&C coach. Now I have to be the sports psych as well. The next couple of slides is or the next bit of the presentation is really about how we can sort of introduce these into our club routines, and then also how we can introduce them into our actual on-pitch sessions without doing a huge amount of adjustment or adding a huge amount of time. As I said, switching the focus a little bit. So look, I'm very aware of how much every coach does. They're the administrator, they're the secretary, they look after the gear, all those sort of things. And now I'm asking to throw something else into you, but I'm also going to try and make it as easy as possible for you to just introduce them into your normal sort of training sessions. this is, I suppose, I talked about there earlier in my introduction about how we're going to create a sort of a motivated and, you know, an environment to motivate our athletes. Now, I'm not saying, I don't want anybody to think for one thing that these aren't some things that coaches are already doing, okay? But I suppose it's definitely, this is probably like, this creates a nice motivated, an environment that would motivate the athletes, okay? And if we're not motivating the athletes, then they're not turning up, and then we're not actually able to develop their skills. So a massive thing of, I suppose, which is the player to be in an environment where they're motivated to learn, they're motivated to perform well, they're motivated, you know, because they feel safe up there also, and they're motivated because the team sort of meets their what we would describe 3 fundamental psychological needs that drive human behavior. So let's try and, you know, focus on some of these, that we bring these into our club. All right, so we know that our players that are coming, they're coming into an environment that's going to drive their sort of human behavior, is going to drive their motivation, is going to drive their want to learn and develop. Okay, and how we do that is you bring in, you know, there's let's call it autonomy, there's competence, there's relatedness. Sounds okay, lovely. We can stick it up on the wall like our club, and that's sorted. No, unfortunately, that's not how it happens. But what we do, but I will break it down a little bit for you, and see how, if we can introduce some of these things into your systems in your club. So one of the big things would be providing autonomy for the player, okay, which basically kind of broken down means like giving the player some self-worth. So, you know, we want to provide them with choice. So, you know, we want to, you know, ask them what do they feel they need to work on in training, things like that. You know, we want to provide a rationale for tasks and limits, and by that mean that we, you know, instead of just kind of going and doing a training session, and just because it's the training session that we want to do, that we're actually explaining, so this drill, folks, is for this, because we play to this style of play. And we always link it into performance. Because, like, you know, the players will, if they're just standing there, here's a cone, lovely drills, we've taken it from the internet, they look fabulous. Okay, but you know, as players, they want to know. Hang on a second, if I do really, really well at this, where is the benefit for me for this on the pitch and in our performance? If we're doing a really tough physical session, going, lads or ladies, we know, okay, that our style of play, we need to be really, really fit, and that's why we're going to have to work really, really hard for next couple. It's going to allow us then to play the style of football that we want to play. So we're not just kind of flamazing them or filling them, you know, with guff. We're actually, you know, providing rationale for the tasks. We're saying exactly why we're doing it. We're linking it to performance, and all of a sudden, you know, the player's going to go, hang a second, all right, I understand why we're doing this now. I have some rationale. I understand the task. I understand the limits. I understand the limits to it. You know, and even after games, we're talking about, instead after the game, look at, guys, what did we do? You know, what do we feel that we need to work on Tuesday? Okay, avoiding all those sorts of choice, those avenues for feedback. Okay, all help with this autonomy, help with this motivation towards motivating our players to I don't know, I suppose, to the best of our abilities, to let them then play and perform to the best of their abilities. So we want to. We're not just, you know, kind of going through the motions, picking nice drills. We're very precise in the drills. We let them know the reason why we're doing them. We let them know, we stop every, you know, we don't necessarily stop every few minutes, but if the drill isn't going the way that we want it to go, we stop and we figure it out why, and we talk it out and we try and figure it out rather than just moving on to something else. Okay, and we provide accurate and truthful feedback. Huge to players. Okay, use the players that we are actually giving them accurate feedback, and so that they notice that they're being noticed. All right, so when we're reviewing with players, we're maybe discussing to them, you know, why they're not playing, or what, you know, or what they need to do to improve themselves, to get themselves onto the team. You know, maybe we're doing that before they've come in and asked us. Maybe we're very aware that this player is, you know, that if we can increase our awareness that players love to have a choice, they like rational for tasks, they like accurate feedback, you know, then we start getting a little bit more, you know, into the mode of, hang on a second, I'm going to approach the player before they are starting to feel bad or starting to suffer motivationally wise. I'm actually going to still know that even though you're not playing, I still notice you. Okay, a big one would be avoiding controlling behavior. Now, look, these are all very, sort of rigid, very kind of, I don't know, they seem strongly when you're written onto a slide like that. Nobody, and avoid controlling behavior is basically just, we don't want to be criticizing players. Okay, we know that ourselves. Okay, and sometimes as coaches we get a little bit over emotional, and we do sort of criticize players. Now, there's a couple of reasons why we want to avoid it. One, obviously, because we don't want to be criticizing a player in front of their peers or in front of their teammates. Okay, we know the sort of the psychological damage that could be doing to the players, but it also makes it very easy for the 3 or 4 players or 5 other players who mightn't also be playing as well, for them all of a sudden turn and look around and say, yeah, he isn't playing great, is he? And it stops a little bit of real, hang on a second, I'm not performing to the best of my abilities here either. Okay, I shouldn't be looking at him, or I shouldn't be looking for another reason to sort of blame anybody. So it not only we don't admonish the player, but we don't want to give anybody else an opportunity to not be reflective on their own performance and to sort of go, oh well, he's playing well, he's going to be the one who's going to get in the neck. I'm all right here, instead of kind of going, well, hang a second, I need to improve my game as well. I can't control what he's doing over there. I've got to be able to look after myself, and I've got to hold my hand up and say, I need to start getting into this game a little bit more. So again, we don't want to be criticizing players because we don't want to hurt that player, and we also don't want to give players an opportunity to sort of blame others. Acknowledge players' feelings and perspectives, have an empathy to players. We don't expect players to understand why they're not playing in a team. As I said there, maybe they don't understand why they're not playing on the team. We don't kind of say, he knows, maybe that player needs to be discussed, maybe that player needs to be talked to, maybe he needs to be given a good, honest and truthful sort of feedback as well. And in the same way, sometimes we play, a lot of football teams, hurling teams, GA teams play to systems. And sometimes a player just mightn't pick up on the system, or mightn't understand position, his position. He mightn't understand his spatial, mightn't be great at spatial awareness, mightn't be, might need a lot more, maybe a sit down with a pen and paper to literally discuss, look, this is the way we play, because all our players are different. All our players will learn skills at different level. They're not, it's like physically grown. Some players are going to, some players go through growth spurts. Some players go through psychological bursts. You know what I mean? They go through physical maturity, mental maturity. Some players are able to understand systems of play really easily. Some players aren't been able to. So let's just be a little bit more aware, a little bit more wary that maybe this person is really struggling when I keep going on about this system of play and I keep screaming at him or her. I really need to, maybe they just don't understand. Okay. We want to provide opportunities for players to show initiative and act independently. Loads of sort of opportunities for that. A very simple one, a task that I always like to do would be, just before before a training session starts, bring out all the equipment, leave it in a pile on the pitch, and the management and selectors all go over to the other side of the pitch and look as if you're talking about something very intently and something very serious. And do that for 10 or 15 minutes and let's see how your team reacts. So we're not necessarily looking for a chance to lash them over anything. But, so if they start getting all the equipment out and start doing their own session, that's brilliant. We go over, that's great. There was a bit of leadership showed there, good communication amongst yourselves. You got the training session going. That's the way you want your team acting and reacting. You want to be able to be able to develop that in your players. If they don't do anything, then we walk over and we kind of go. We don't go, for God's sake. We go, right, okay, folks. We missed what do we think the message is here? We missed an opportunity there for somebody to step up, somebody to be a leader, for others to follow, and we said, missed an opportunity for you to take on a task yourselves, and for not needing us to set up the cones or set up the drills for you. It's just a nice little one to sort of promote that thought, because I guarantee you'll do it once and they'll never do it again. You know what I mean? So they've thought they've learned something. Do you know what I mean? They've actually picked something up from that. Okay, and we want to avoid some behavior that promotes athletes' ego involvement. Okay, this is not necessarily. It's the kind of the one that look at give it into Mary in full forward. She's the best player we have. Okay, and everything kind of revolves around the one person or the one player, you know, that kind of massages that player's ego, and then, you know, that you're saying to other players, you need to be developing a little bit more. I mean, you need to be doing that, okay? Because, you know, as I said, it kind of creates that star player. You know, some star players do need to be treated differently, different temperaments, different levels of motivation and all things like that, but we want to avoid that sort of ego and ego involvement. All right, sorry, that one was a bit long. There we go. So we've got confidence in what they're doing. We all know this. We want athletes feel capable to meet expectations of their coach, or that they feel like they're making progress. They said, like, you know, if they're said to have met their needs for this is meant to have had their need for competence met. And I suppose a really simple way of doing this is being, you know, alive in training sessions. So we're actually walking around our coaching sessions. We're seeing a player doing something, and we're saying, God, John, if you can, man, if you actually bring that onto the pitch now in a couple of weeks' time, you are going to be flying. I can see you taking your player on now all year long, and because you see you're still really developing on that skills. You can guarantee that player is going to be give you 100% for the rest of that training sessions. And again, it's linked to performance. So we don't just go, come on, you are flying, lads or ladies. Come on, folks. This is all we like when we get out to pitch and flying. We relate it all to performance. We kind of individualized it a little bit. So every single player feels that, hang on a second, I'm being noticed. You know, I feel like I'm making progress. Okay, and my confidence is being met. All right, and they're saying players who feel less confident won't develop as quickly as players who feel confident in their sport, and motivation reduces at a faster rate. Look, we know that, but I suppose the tip or the hint that I would want you to do, player coaches doing, is when we're in those training sessions, is that link it to performance all the time. You're going like, you know, you took that corner so sharply. All right, imagine what you're going to be able to do now when you go onto the pitch. Brilliant, keep it up. Those sort of information to players are what helps them meet the confidence factor, and keeps them motivated, keeps them wanting to learn, wanting to develop, wanting to come train. And then relatedness, okay, feeling connected to the environment. So the picture I had there is, look, we see it an awful lot more maybe on, you know, on sort of, or maybe at go games and things like that, where you have the one or two players who are the tokens. So bring them on for a couple of minutes, you know, that keeps the parents happy, keeps the players happy. All right, look, it doesn't. We know it 100% it doesn't. They need to feel related or connected to their teammates. And if you're dealing with 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 different personalities, right? Not everybody has to be best friends. Not everybody has to be getting along with each other. But the only way to keep these players connected is by them actually playing football. Players playing football together. So we need to facilitate them feeling connected to their teammates, and they need a sense of belonging on the team squad. Okay, so you know, where people kind of, you know, look, it's that age-old sort of: do we want to win? Do we want to just, you know, do we want to, you know, keep our players motivated? Depends on the age, it plays on the level, and it depends on the grade, and, you know, of that you're working on as to the balance of that. But look, all coaches need to know that their players need to feel connected to their teammates, and that can be done by not necessarily just playing all the time, all right, but you can be honest appraisal. You know what I mean? These people can take over captain's roles. You know what I mean? That their opinions are valued inside on the football pitch and outside of the football pitch as well. You know, and that we're facilitating them to still feel related to their teams, even if they're not necessarily getting all the playing time that they want, or we want them to have. Okay, so again, look at that. We're moving on to a little bit now to sort of pre-season, like the foundations. So again, this is the step 2 of helping with this motivation and motivative environment, and keeping our players motivated, you know, keeping them feeling like they belong there, like they want to learn, like they want to develop, like they're actually getting better, and that we're linking everything here to improving their sort of performance as well. And these are sort of how we set up the foundations of that. So, you know, especially in times now at the moment where we're not on the pitch, it's the perfect time to be doing the likes of this, where we set up a player's profile, what makes your players tick, You know what I mean? It's players' questionnaires. What's their why? What's their sporting goals? You know, describe themselves as a player, what a coach would say about them, what's their biggest like and dislike about participating in sports. There's loads of these sorts of things online about player profiles. You know, you just find one that might fit into you and find out this information about, about your players. All right, and just might find there might be just a little bit of information in there that maybe describes or maybe explains why they reacted in a certain way, or why they're not motivated, or why, you know, what's their biggest likes and dislikes about sport. Okay, but you know, start building a little athletic profiles of our players. On top of that, make sure we get them being very self-aware of themselves. What are their strengths and weaknesses? What's their sort of kryptonite performance wheel here you have? So generally what you would do is get a player to pick an athlete who they really admire. What are their 8 characteristics that they think that this athlete has? So this athlete, as far as I'm concerned, has all those elite characteristics. The elite characteristics get written on the outside of the circle, and then they grade themselves as to where they think they are. And then that sets them up on a little development path. Okay, well, I know that maybe, look at that player, you know, it seems to be supremely confident. I'm not, my confidence isn't great. So how can I go about improving my confidence? All right. This just sets them off on a path a bit more self-aware. What do I want to develop on? You know, what are the areas that are going to get me to improve performance? You know, what can I leave behind? What can I really start developing on? Okay, and that just, again, it just promotes this thought process. This promotes this performance behaviors, this constant look for development, constant look to try and improve themselves. Okay, and we help them along the way as coaches. We help them with their goal setting, which is this one, and I have it written there, which is a necessary evil. Okay, because goal setting essentially is a session in itself. You know, the areas that have a necessary evil, because we've all been on teams or probably done it, sat down as coaches, where we write a lovely piece of paper and our goal set, and we write it all down, and we're walking out of the room motivated and high-fiving each other, and then a couple of weeks later something gets pulled out of the bottom of a folder or a gear bag, and it was this thing that we spent 2 hours doing on a session somewhere. Goal setting is very, very important. All right, and the aims of the goals would be, you know, set out to start of the season. Doesn't mean that they're rigid and they can't change depending on how a season goes. But if your team decides that winning the league and championship is what they want to do and what they want to achieve, well, then it sets out, well, guys, if that's what, guys and girls, if that's what we want, then this is the development path that we're going. This is the path that we're going to have to go, and we're going to have to train this many times a week. We're going to have to do this, and this, and it opens up the eyes for the pathway for them. We're going to also, it also helps manage their expectations if they're a little bit high also as well. So if a team, like, you know, every team's going to want to win the championship at the start of the year, and we kind of go, well, hang on a second, right? Where were we last year? What's the big difference between last year and this year for us to get up to that point that we want to do now? Okay, it is a necessary evil, but, you know, but goal setting is something very, very important to help set the pathway at the start. Structured analysis of performance. Okay, so I do want, like, this is a really, really good handy tool. You sit down with your coaches at the start of the year, we find what are the 10 or 8, 10, 12, 15 really important points of performance that is a successful performance for us. Fitness, hand pass, whatever you decide, and we get our players to grade them, and they're their work-ons for Tuesday night. So you turn around and say, guys, every single one of you, guys and girls, every single one of you is going to write down in this, fill in this analysis sheet after every performance, and I'm going to be standing at the door of the training of the dressing room on Tuesday night asking you, when you walk out, what's your work on? What's your work on? What's your work on? And they've graded themselves. They found an area that they didn't perform well in, and that's what their own personal work on is for Tuesday night. Again, it's just promoting that development sort of, that performance mindset, that everything I want to do, that everything I do here is going to help me improve my performance moving forward. Okay. So look at, guys, we've a few minutes left. All right. So communication, massive one. Okay. Massive. All right. This, I know where people are going, hang on, it's sports psychology. What we talk, this is just communication. Yeah. But let's set out the parameters of how we talk to each other, how we're going to communicate with each other, how the player will communicate issues to the coaches and vice versa. For example, we don't want you just go off into the corner, or we don't want you just the captain. Maybe you decide it's just the captain comes if they have a problem and they go to the captain. But this is how you are going to set up these communication factors for yourself. All right, you are going to say, well, this is when somebody's going to miss training, this is what we do. When somebody's going to miss a match, we need to know this. When like if somebody needs to be pulled up in training, how are we going to do it? Do we take them aside? No shouting from the sidelines. Instead of shouting the sidelines, maybe we ask the question, what did you see there? You know, let's get used to, instead, you know, the criticism, the sideline, hang on a second, what did you see there? Okay, well, if you'd have noticed, you turn around to the left-hand side there, and if you turn around onto the left-hand side, the whole pitch to the side is open. It's better than the criticism or the shouting. All right, honest discussion about team selection and how to communicate when missing training or a match, etc. How players should treat each other, no criticism in play. Concentration and focus, instead of going sort of, you know, everybody focus. We hear that get shouted quite a lot. What does that even mean? So let's break it down to your players, make it very simple for them. When I want you to make up 3 of your own things if you want. So whenever I shout, from now on, folks, whenever I shout focus, I want you to switch on to where the ball is. I want you to switch on where your player is and the movement of the game. It's just something that's easy to bring into players. When you shout focus, that every single one player on the team knows exactly what it is you want them to focus on, the ball, the player, or the movement of the game. Okay, now I'm flying through these ones. Okay, we know these are going to be available for you to look at next week. And again, my contact details are going to be available for everybody as well. Switching the mindset. Okay, mistakes, part of the game. Okay, we really need to stop linking mistakes to poor performance. Even our best performances are littered with errors and mistakes. Mistakes should be considered as part of learning and developing. Okay, big sort of thing about we make mistakes, can't change it. Okay, we've really got to manage our reaction around it. So it's important how you talk to your teams about mistakes. So when we say things of like let's not make mistakes or keep the mistakes down to a minimum, a lot of the focus then goes, God, I cannot make mistakes. So let's think about it. If we want a player who's going to kind of go, God, I can't make mistakes. If I make a mistake, you know, then I better not do it again. If I keep making mistakes, then I'm not going to play next week. The manager keeps saying stuff about mistakes. Do we want a player going in with that mindset, or do we want a player kind of going, look, if I make a mistake, I can't do anything about it. I've got to stay positive, nice and positive with myself, and I got to actually plan. It might happen again, but I just got to get on with the game and not let it affect me anymore. I definitely want the player who had a process for making the mistake and has turned around and kind of gone, look, I can't do anything about it now. Probably going to make a little bit more, but all I can do is just keep trying my best. That's the player that I want. Okay, the language of let's not make mistakes, don't make mistakes. That just puts a little bit more pressure, puts a little bit more emphasis on the fact that we cannot make mistakes. So mistakes are going to happen in the game. Mistakes can mean we're pushing ourselves. We're part of a team, so I'm going to make mistakes. Even saying this to your players, look at your midfielder. You're going to make a mistake this week. You know, John is going to be the one who's going to pick up the piece of you, and it's going to switch around next week. So listen, team, we are allowed to make mistakes because we're here, we're part of a team, and we're going to support each other through them. Be nicer to yourself. Say this to players. You know, the player who are killing themselves when every single time they make a mistake, talk to them. Listen, what do you do when a teammate makes a mistake? What do you say to them? Listen, you say to them, well, don't worry about it. Just keep, get the head in the game, and just keep playing on. Well, say that to yourself the next time. All right, just speak a little bit nicely to yourself. And we also, again, like the team analysis, we want to analyze our mistakes, errors after the game. Okay, there were sporting mistakes, then you understand that they happen. But if they're technical mistakes, it gives us something to focus on the next training session. And that's the kind of environment you want them going around in. Look, I'm allowed to make mistakes, but as long as but I'm also going to be able to work on them. If I make mistakes, I'll highlight them and I work on them the next day. And again, it just fosters that performance mindset, that competitive mindset we want to move forward. Nerves, we want to try and reframe nerves for our team, for our players. A good way I explain it would, not a good way, a way I found is good to explain it would be, it's like a battery charged. Once we overcharge, it's charging up, ready for competition. And once we go overcharge it, that's when we get the negative thoughts, the what ifs, the doubts, the lack of confidence, the niggly injury that had been gone for weeks now all of a sudden comes back. All right, and breathing techniques and center breathing can help control this. Something we're going to talk about now in a minute. I'm going to fly through those. So we want to kind of restructure nerves for our players. Yeah, we're going to get nervous, but to be conscious, when you get over nervous, you're going to be thinking negatively. You're going to have thought. What we want to do is not go away from that negative thought, not just try and block it out, but just kind of go, hang a second, what do I feel nervous about? You know, I'm nervous about not playing well, but look at, I'm flying and training, I could really play well. So when creating these mindsets is what we talk about. I keep talking about this, creating this mindset. The language that the coaches use is huge. Replacing I can or I will, I love to. So if I player is kind of going, oh, what if, or, you know, this sort of worrying about making mistakes all the time, then that we're kind of going, listen, you know, well, what? Never mind what if, you can or you will. You've more control over your thoughts than you think. Don't be afraid of negative. Tackle it. So what am I feeling negative about? I'm feeling negative about because I know I'm marking that player. Well, hang on a second. They're a really good player, but I'm a good player. This all, like, you know, it's going to let me know where I am at the end of the game anyway. And look at your, you know, why I don't want to feel threatened by that. I want to actually challenge this situation. That's the kind of mindset we want to try and create. Useful and useless thoughts. These are my favorite ones. We never play well on this pitch. Oh, sure, we never play well. So we're giving ourselves an excuse, a reason. This ref hates us. We're giving ourselves an excuse and a reason. We all say it on the way down to the match to go, this is why we're not going to play well, because we're going to play on this pitch. Or because this referee hates us. You know, the pitch is the pitch. The ref is probably just a poor ref. But if we're thinking this and we have this mindset going down to a game, this is what we're going to think. This is what we're going to consider. Fortunately, we don't want to predict the future, can't change the past, can't influence. When we hear our players talking about, oh, we owe these a hammering, or you know, oh, we never beaten these. Look, we can't change those things. We can't predict the future. We can't influence anything that's happened before. We just focus on what we're doing here now. This group here, and we're going to focus on performing this game right now, because we can't change anything about what's happened there, or we can't do it in the future. We don't use terms like must-win game or focus too much on the result. Okay, so we're using and this thing of focus on the performance, not the outcome, is one of the most overused sort of cliches that we have in sport, that there is in sorts of performance psychology. But I suppose it's not about focusing on the win. It's more about focusing, because focusing on the win puts too much pressure on us. We know we want to win. There's no doubt about that. But the main focus on winning, you know, and then it's the focus on winning, it's also focused on let's just not lose. So if we're losing a game after a couple of minutes, all the focus is now, oh my God, we are not winning and we're going to lose. Right, and our mindset then is a little bit disrupted, our process is a little bit disrupted, because our focus was not winning, and we've already not achieving our aim here. Okay, and we're now getting in our own way of allowing us to perform. Okay, so this is a big one. The challenge versus threat is huge. I love this one. I'm going to be doing some playlists up on the YouTube channel as well. This challenge versus threat is going to be probably the big one. We really want our teams to be going, bring it on. We don't feel threatened by the situation. We're challenged by it. So, you know, even if a player loses their position, you know, a coach can turn around to a player and go, okay, listen, you've lost your position now, but look, what's the best possible way? Best possible way is for you to react, is to be challenged by the situation, not threatened by it. Don't just kind of go off and sort of feel sorry for yourself, or, you know, ask me what I see, why you're not playing. And then challenge me to, in 2 weeks' time, you're going to attack every training session, and you're going to come and give me 2 weeks' time, you're going to put pressure on me. That's just one example. But even when we're playing good teams or poor weather or stuff, things like that, let's not feel threatened in the situation. Let's kind of look at it, clap the hands and go, okay, bring it on. Let's see where we are. This is a challenge. Let me enjoy this challenge. Controllable versus uncontrollable, another huge one that you hear saying on the TV, everything all the time, this controllable versus uncontrollable. But it's hugely important, and it incorporates an awful lot of things, because all we can do is focus on what we can control. Focus on me, focus on us. And even getting that ethos into the team of, listen, what you're talking about, things we've no control over there. We just focus on what we can do, focus on our preparation, focus on confidence, focus on being positive, and focusing on, you know, feeling really challenged in this situation. So whenever we could touch on to stuff that is uncontrollable, as a coaches, we're kind of giving our teams and our players a little bit of kind of, you know, free license to go. But so let's focus only on controllable elements. And we can't change the situation. We can 100% manage your reactionary behavior to the situation. Again, it's a good thing to throw out to your players. Listen, you know, we're 10 points, 5 points down, 5 points up, whatever. You know, that's, you know, probably better used in a down situation. We can't change that situation. but let's manage our reaction about this now and what we're going to do going forward. It can be used in loads of different situations. All right, we're down a player. Poor weather, poor referee. You can't change it, but what's our best reaction possible for it? Again, I hope these are sort of things that you're looking and going, okay, maybe, yeah, I can definitely see where I can use that. I can use that. I could have used that previously. All right. And now I'm just going to spend, honestly, 5 minutes talking about how we bring this into our pitch session. I know we ran over there, guys, and I do apologize for that. And here's the sort of things that we can really start bringing into our training sessions. This one was going to be a hard sell to some players. Okay, so it's focus breathing, which is the foundation of all thought control, basically, foundation of all focus, foundation of a lot of mental skills. And we want to try and teach our players how to remain focused. Okay, and if we can bring in a focus breathing for 2.5 minutes into every single training session, okay, we're going to improve our players' concentration points. We're going to improve their ability to take a big bet during the game and get a bit more emotional control. Block out all the internal and external distractions. And it's there, sitting up, back and straight. Okay, feet shoulder width apart, breathing from the diaphragm, focus on your breathing. So we're imagining it's a cold morning. So you explain to your players, breath going in and out, eyes closed, noise control breathing. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to just focus on the breath. Focus on the breathing coming in and out. If we hear distractions, we're trying to push them out and we're trying to focus back onto the breathing. And that's the point that we're trying to extend. That concentration point. So sitting there for 2.5 minutes with the eye on the clock, them going, oh, that's grand, that's done, is not what we're trying to extend. You're trying to extend the point of them breathing, staying in that moment. When they get a thought or distraction, that they're able to block it out and focus themselves back on the breathing. If anybody has questions about this, again, fire it off in an email to want more explanation of it. We can do it. I'm just moving nice and quickly through this sort of stuff now because the next couple of slides are the ones that I think we can use instantly. All right. So the sort of things, this is, stuff has changed over the last couple of years. The way sports is delivered, sports psychology sessions are normally done like this, presentations in offices, virtual couches, whatever, in presentations. But I think we can definitely start bringing it out onto the pitch. All right. Strength and conditioning would have been only done in the gym previously. Now it can get done onto a pitch. And I think that we can start doing that in drills that we're probably already out doing. So here we go in the warm-up. So we've probably all done this before. These games of X's and O's or Connect 4 that we do when we set out with the cones and the bibs, we do it as a bit of a novelty. But I think we should be, these are the ones that we should be introducing into all our training sessions. It gets the players moving with their head up, okay, improves decision making under pressure and focus, because we'll do this drill. You'll do these drills, okay, and players just run out, and even though there's something glaring for them, they'll throw the bib down just because they want to throw it out there, and they just want to get back as quick as possible because they don't want anybody to think that they're going to mess up when they're out there. But let's bring these into our training sessions. These Connect 4s, the X's and O's, brilliant for decision making under pressure, brilliant for getting players to zone onto an area and to focus on something. All things that we do in a football match or a hurling match or any other GAA sports, like looking up to an area and focusing on an area, blocking out any sort of distractions and trying to execute a movement to that area. The likes of X's, O's, Connect 4s are perfect for those sort of improving those games. Count the opposition passes is another one. You split the teams into two squares. Split. You have 2 squares, and 2 teams, 2 squares, two squares, and a team in each square, and they're passing the ball around to each other in their own separate squares, trying to count their own pass. They're passing the ball around, but they're also counting the opposition squares passes. You can increase the pace. You can throw in another football. You can widen it out for kick passes. Again, it's getting the player moving with their head up. They're now trying to concentrate on 2 or 3 different things, trying to concentrate on their own movement, their own hand passes, but they're also trying to count the opposition's hand passes or kick passes as well. At the end of it, you blow the whistle after a minute, and we ask each team, right, how many passes did the other team do? Okay, and we're looking for them to get pretty close, all right? But again, not a novelty. Bring them into every single training session and throw in your own little twists. And then the likes of hand pass tag. 1 ball with a team hand passing to the other to tag the other team out. 5 or 6 fellas running around, or boys or girls running around in a square. 2 fellas with a ball on a team, hand passing the ball to each other, trying to tag the opposition team out. Again, brilliant for communication, brilliant for decision making, brilliant for, you know, just working a little bit under pressure. Don't have them as a novelty. Introduce these and integrate these into your everyday training sessions. Again, if anybody needs clarification or run through these, you can give me a shout. This is one of my favorite ones. That short-sided pitch with a goal on each side. It's a rolling game, so you'd have teams on each. You know, you'd have teams on each end of each goal, and the team attacks one goal. When the play breaks down, then that attacking team then becomes the defenders, right? So the main aim normally is just to score a goal, but the focus should also really be on communication. So switching from a defense to attack and good decision making under pressure. So maybe the aim or the goal, the aim of the drill initially might be to score a goal, but then we switch the focus, and the next 5 or 10 minutes of the drill is about that communication. About the communication of players along that line, changing defence to attack, making good decisions and working under pressure. And what's rewarded is the fact that is the team that consistently turns around and reacts from the forward defence into attack rather than the team that scores the goal. So we just, it's normal drill, but we refocus we focus it also onto communication, all right, and focus on transition to attack, good decision making and under pressure. Any game-based sort of playing, the short-sided drills, short-sided games where it's carnage, a bit of, you know, where there's, you know, 6-on-6 in a small square. Let's introduce them into every single training session. Discipline, but we introduce discipline to tackle, so we're not fouling. Improves decision-making, communication, mistake management. Somebody makes a mistake, big out and flip. We don't need that reaction. The best reaction, you can't change the situation, manage the reaction. So when you make a mistake, best thing you can do for yourself and the teammate, pick yourself up, get yourself into position. Again, it's the focus is not necessarily about keeping possession of the ball, but the coaches are now looking out for discipline and attack. We're looking for good decision making, looking for communication. We're looking for players who have managed their mistakes. And after a few minutes, we pause, allow the team to discuss their performances and the improvements that they think they made, and how that they can then bring that into the next performance going forward into the game. Another one, target man. Using games where scoring is involved. So each player from each team wears a different coloured bib, and they're the target person. Any score from this player is double the score. So this can really be good for helping teams develop their system of play. If you're playing a certain position where you're looking to hit a ball into a target all the time, certain area of the pitch, then that player should be wearing the target. Helps develop that. But it also, if you have a defender who you want to improve their marking, you put the player with the targeted bib onto them, and they have to stay focused in that game. All right, improves decision making, improves defenders' awareness, creates a bit more head-up football because the team is always going to be looking for that target man, and it again helps develop systems of play also as well. I know, again, sorry, I know we're flying through these. I'm very conscious of the time here, and this is our last one. So on the pitch, mental training, reaction to triggers. So any form of those reaction exercises that we do. So again, we usually kind of do them for the last 2 or 3 minutes of every training session on the line, you know, reacting left, right, or odd or even, or opposites. We need to get those into every single training session, okay? Because they do mimic our performance, the performance elements that we need at games. Nice quick reactions, decision making, performing under pressure. Okay, so we have our players on the line shouting left and right, and we should be looking for development of this as well. You know, so the first time you do it at the start of the season, we're going to have a few players running left and right or whatever, but by the end of it, all our players should be tuned in and switched on to it and monitor these exercises. That's the important element as well. So on the line, any form of complex skills, you know, where we do where we're warming up with 2 balls, where players are close interactions, you know, juggling balls, solos, hand passes, all those complex skills. McBone is the main sort of man behind that, and there's plenty of those online. So where the player is actually, you know, there's a thought process that has to go into them, as well as a physical process. Any of those games like head, shoulders, knees, back, ball, those ones where they're standing in line and they're reacting to the ball, again, great for decision making, working under pressure, centering the mind when needed. So focusing down onto that ball, we're improving the concentration, like that drill we did it with when we're counting the other players' hand passes. Improves concentration, focus, blocking out all distractions, focus only on the ball, wait for me to say ball and the first person to grab it. Okay, and again, we throw in a few forfeits to apply the extra pressure. Okay, so those last 4 or 5 slides are the ones that we can really be introducing into our training sessions as soon as we hit the pitch, and the other stuff that we can be maybe bringing in to start helping create that sort of environment of motivation and flourishing for our players there going forward. Okay, so look, folks, that was my last slides there. I know there's questions that I don't know. Paul, my screen is going to be funny there. I could be talking to nobody at this point, but I hope that everybody got some real value of it. Again, here is my contact details. I'll leave that up for you there for a couple of seconds to take it down, take a screenshot, take a photo, get in touch with me for anything, any reasons that you have whatsoever. I can only apologize again for me